Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Ethical Cruise. Today in this video, I will talk about AWS IAM part 2. So this will be in continuation of the previous video where I started with AWS IAM. So this is like a fourth video in the series of cloud computing. So in the previous videos, I already talked about the cloud computing concepts, about AWS overview, about management console, what IAM is and all. So in this video, we'll talk about IAM more detail. Okay, so let's start. So I'll start with what is IAM policy. So if you remember in the last video, I discussed about whenever we do any authentication, after the authentication, there is a process called authorization, which determines which user or entity can access basically AWS resources. Okay, so that is being determined by using these policies. And these policies are nothing but a JSON documents which describes the permission for any user. Okay, and these policies are assigned basically to users, groups, or the role levels. Okay, so if I'll talk you about like how these policies and all works. So let's take an example. Like this is in these are three users: Alice, Bob, and Charles, and these are assigned to a group called developers. Okay, and now we have provided a permission at a group level, that is we have provided the permission to a developers group. So all the users who are part of this developer groups will have the same permission. Okay, so this is called a policies inheritance because we have provided permission to developer group, and since users are part of that group, so they automatically inherit the permission of that group. Okay, also let's suppose there are another group, David and Edward. They are user of the part of operations group. So whatever permissions operations group is having, same permission will be assigned to David and Edward. Okay, and similarly, there is a third group, audit team group, and these are having users Charles and David. Okay, so Charles and David will automatically inherit the permission which is assigned to audit team. Okay, and also since we already know in as per the last video, a user can belongs to many groups. Okay, that's why this Charles group, since it is belonging to both developers as well as audit team group, so this Charles user is having permission of developers as well as audit team. So whatever permission we have provided to developer group and whatever permission we have provided to audit team group, so both these permissions will be assigned to Charles. Okay, these users are part of a group, that's why whatever permission we are assigning to group is getting inherited to these users. But if we take an example of this Fred, okay, this Fred user, this is not assigned to any group. Okay, so whatever permission we are providing to this, these inline permissions, so this will be assigned to Fred user. Okay, so this is like what is policy and how it is works. Okay, if I go in a little bit detail, like how this JSON document is basically structured, what is the structure of this policies document? So this is like a basic example. So this IAM policy consists first of all this version field. Okay, this version policy language determines your policy language version, which is always this 2012, 10, and 17. So this is like a hard coded value. This is not a variable. Okay, the second value which we are having in policy structure is ID. So ID is like a optional value, okay, which determines that's like an identifier for the policy. Okay, and the third one is your statement. So this statement is the main part which basically determines what user can do what action on what resources. So a statement is like an array, as you can see from this square bracket opening and closing one, and this within this square bracket within this array we have a JSON objects. Okay, we can have multiple JSON objects which will determine the actual permission for anything. Okay, so this is basically statement. So we have majorly these three part: version, ID, and statement. So version and statement are like a mandatory fields and ID is like an optional field. Okay, if we talk about more in detail what statement actually consists of, so statement first of all consists of an SID. Okay, so this is basically identifier for a statement, so that's why it's a statement identifier. Okay, so this is again an optional field. So if you like see in this in this particular JSON object, so this is a SID, this is list text for all users. So that's like a statement identifier which we are giving. Okay, after that we have an effect. So effect basically determine whatever permission which we are writing is to allow the access or to deny the access. Okay, so if we are writing that we want to allow access for this particular user for whatever thing which we are doing, then we can write it as allow, or similarly we can write it as deny if we do not want to we do not want to provide access to the particular resources. Okay, third one comes here is the actions. Okay, so actions list the actions that policy allows or denies. So whatever action we write in this array. So that will basically determine list of action which a user can either be allowed for or it will be uh, disallowed. Okay, and then comes the resources. So resources are the basic AWS resources for which this action will be actionable. Okay, so if action are written here and resources star means all. So if we are writing this wildcard here is this star, this means this particular action and this effect will be applicable on all the resources. Okay, also there is one optional field that is condition. So condition comes into picture when we want to have some particular condition, then only it will be satisfied this particular statement. Like in this example you can see this condition is written within this curly braces. So when this condition will be satisfied, then this particular action will be applicable on this all the resources. Okay, so this is a general example of how the policy structure is present. Okay, in a nutshell it will contain version id statement where id will be an optional, and then again a statement can have multiple statements within an array as part of a json objects. Okay, once we are done with the policy structure. Okay, so we have defined what policy we want to assign to our user. Then we can do the policy assignment. We can either create our create a own policy also, or we can also use the existing AWS policies which can be assigned either to IAM user or IAM group as well as to the IAM role. Okay, so let's see in detail like how policies are basically being created and all, and how we can see visualize it better. Okay, so let's go to the AWS management console to see how it is structured. Okay, I'm here on this AWS console. So let's search for the IAM. So here, since already visited this IAM, so I'm just clicking on this as because this is already part of my recently visited services. Okay, so first of all, go to policies. Once I'll come here, I'll go to this policies. Okay, here I am seeing like there are 977 policies which are basically being provided. Okay, so if I'll see any of the policy here, like this AWS Direct Connect read only access. Okay, this is basically being managed by AWS. Okay, so if I'll expand it, here you can see that what a little bit summary of this, like it provides read-only access to AWS Direct Connect via the AWS Management Console. And here you can see the actual JSON object, the policy structure of this particular policy. Okay, here first statement is like the version which like a mandatory thing. The second one is a statement. Okay, so since it is doesn't since id was an optional field, so it was not needed, hence it is not mentioned here. So it is starting with statement. So statement is like a array, and within a statement it will be a JSON object. Within update, this is an effect which is basically stating whether it wants to allow or disallow. Here it wants to allow the thing, then here are the actions which is allowing to do, and then here it is the resources, on what resources it is basically applicable. Okay, so in this manner this is the example of how this policy structure is basically being present. Okay, let's try to do one thing. Let's try to create a user. Okay, let's try to create a new user. Let's say we are saying a name Donna. If you remember, I already talked about how we can create an IAM user in my previous video. You will find the link of that previous video in the description. Also, you can check it out in the I button. Okay. And selecting custom password generation. And I do not want to reset my password after next login. So I am unchecking this checkbox. Now clicking next on permissions. Okay. So here are two ways by which I can provide the permission to this particular user. Either I can inherit the permission which are already provided to one of this developer group, or also I can attach an existing policy directly. Okay, so let's suppose I attach an existing policy directly here. I am trying to attach the administrator access. So let's see first what this administrator access is having. So in this policy summary, you can see within a JSON object, here is a version. In version, there is a statement and JSON array. Okay, and within this array there is a JSON object. Within this the effect is allow. Since this is an administrator access providing full access on all the resources, that's why the action is having the wildcard, which means it is allowing all the actions, and also it is allowing the action on all the resources. Okay, so that's like a full admin access which is being provided. So I'm selecting this policy, clicking on next. I'm not providing any tags as of now since these are optional. Clicking on review. Here you can see that the summary of that. I have provided this policy here, and click on create user. Okay, now if you see within its genre, I go to this, and here I can see there is an administrator access which is already being provided. Now let's assign this group. Let's assign this user to a group which is here. Add user to a group. Developer group. I am assigning it. Now, if I'll go coming back to this permission, then I can see now this particular user is having two type of permissions. One permission is which I have directly provided it, that you can see under this attach directly, this administrator access, and the second one is attached from the group, which this bit which it basically inherited from the permissions which we have provided to that developer group. Okay, these are the two kind of permissions. Also, if you want, you can create any of your policy also. Okay, so let's go to this policies, and you can create your own policy in this manner. Okay, just create a policy here. Now first of all, you have to select a service. For what service you want this policy to be applicable. Let's suppose I'm selecting this EC2 instance. Okay, so I'm selecting this EC2 instance. Then I want to select the actions which will be allowed in EC2. Okay, so let's suppose under list, I am selecting something which this EC2 instance on which it can be done. Okay, then it needs whether I have to provide the actionable items on all the resources or some specific resources. Okay, so for now, let's suppose I'm providing it on the all the resources. So once you select this all the resources, you will notice like it will give you a warning type of thing. Like as a best practice, you do not have to need to provide it on the all the resources. As a best practice, also always try to provide your actionable items only on specific items. Okay, but for now, I'm just selecting this all the resources. Okay, after that, just click on request conditions. So this is like a condition is thing which is optional thing. Okay, for now I'm selecting it as a multi-factor authentication required. Okay, once we are done with this, then we can also go to this JSON tab, and here we can visualize all the things which we have created in the terms of JSON object. Okay, the version automatically being present, SID they generated automatically, effect allow action whatever thing which we selected in that action tab, resources since I selected all the resources, and conditions since I selected a multi-factor authentication present. Okay, so in this manner I have created this. I can click on next. Click on next for review. Here I can provide a name, policy created for demo purpose. Okay, let's just create this policy. And if you notice, policies counter has been increased by 1. Earlier it was 977 policies, but now it has been increased to 978. Now let's search for the policy which I created. Okay, so here I am seeing this particular policy which I created, and here you can see the type as customer managed. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll try to assign this policy to my existing user which I am having. So I go back to this user Donna, go to this permission. Okay, and add an inline policy. Oh, sorry. I'll add the permission to a group level first. Permission has been added. Now I'll go to this group, donor group. And here you can see like whatever all the permissions this donor user is having. One which was directly attached and other two which was attached from a group. Okay. As you can see, AWS Direct Connect Read Only Access. This was the policy which was inherited from the group and it was created by AWS. That's why it is written AWS Managed Policy from Group Developer. Okay. And this policy basically, since I have created and assigned to developer group, that's why I'm seeing this managed policy from group developer. Okay. So this is how you can play around the policy. You can assign the policy to either the group, to the user. You can also create your own customized policy and then can inherit this policy at a group level as well as at a user level. Okay. Next, that is AWS recommended password policy. Okay. So whenever we are trying to log in into management console, okay, we need a combination of username and password. Okay. But to maintain the security of our account, we should have a strong password, whatever password we are trying to log in. Okay. So as per the recommendation, always try to set a strong passwords for your group and users you are creating, because the strong passwords are needed to maintain security of your account. Okay. You can also set a custom password policy on your AWS account to basically specify your complexity requirement and some mandatory rotation period also for your IAM user password. Okay. And if you do not want to set a custom password policy, you can use the default password AWS password policy. Okay. You can read more about how to customize password policy at this particular link. I'll provide the link of this in the description below. Okay, let's check how we can basically customize our password for an IAM user. Let's go to AWS Management Console. I'm coming back to this AWS Management Console. I'd go to this account setting. Okay, within this identity and access management itself. Here you will see a button that is change password policy. Okay, once you click on this, you can basically customize whatever password policy you want. You can enforce minimum password length. You can increase it from 8 to 10 or anything, whatever you want. You can have required at least one uppercase, one lowercase, at least one number. Also, you can enable password expiration. You can determine after how many days you want your password to be expired. Also, you can allow users to change their own password, or you can prevent password reuse, so it will remember last few passwords which you will mention. So in this manner you can basically customize your password policy. Okay. Always try to remember that, try to keep it strong so that it will be difficult for anyone to basically crack your password, and in this manner you can basically ensure safety of your AWS account. Okay. Coming next, that is multi-factor authentication, which is needed in IAM. Okay. So strong password is your first level of defense to protect your AWS account and resources. But this should not be the only one uh, factor. Okay. So if we talk about uh, defense in depth, there should be some multiple level of defenses which should be there to secure your account. Okay. So once you have a strong password, then after that you should also enable multi-factor authentication for all your accounts, either for root account and for as well as IAM account. Okay. So you should enable multi-factor authentication to increase the security of your account. Okay. In general, multi-factor authentication is a combination of username, which you already know, password also which you already know, plus an OTP which you not know already, but you have a device or something like that from which you can have this OTP, like in the terms of SMS or from the device. So this is like a thing which you not know earlier. Okay. So you should ensure to enable multi-factor authentication. uh, I'll post the link of this but I'll post the link of this particular AWS document about this multi-factor authentication, which you can read about more. And now let's see how we can basically enable this multi-factor authentication for the user Donna, which I just created. Okay. So I'm coming to this user section again. I'm clicking on this users. I'm clicking on this Donna user. Here in the security credentials, you can see the assigned MFA device is not assigned. Okay, because we have not assigned any multi-factor authentication to it. Once I click on this manage, you will see like these are the type of manage multi-factor authentication devices, like the virtual one, your security key, or your hardware devices. Okay. For now, let's say I'm selecting this virtual multi-factor authentication device. Okay. Once I'm clicking on this, it will give me this authentication option. Okay. Then I can scan it via the QR code. Okay. So if I select it, I am just setting it up on my device. I am using one of the device method for this. So I'm just entering the code which I'm receiving for that particular device. In this manner, it will be authenticated and the multi-factor authentication will be enabled on this particular user. Okay, so I'm waiting for the second multi-factor authenticator code to be generated, and it is done. Okay. You can see that you have successfully assigned virtual MFA. Okay, if I'll go to this dashboard, no, click on users first. Here you can see this MFA now has been changed from not assigned to virtual, because we have assigned a MFA now to this particular user Donna. Okay, so in this manner, you can basically play out, you can assign, you can enable multi-factor authentication for your users. In same manner, you can do it for any other user, whether it is root user or your IAM user. Next, how users can access AWS resources and services. Okay, so there are three ways in which users can access the AWS services and resources. Like the first one is AWS Management Console, which I already talked about in detail from previous two sessions. And basically, it is protected by password as well as multi-factor authenticator code, which I just showed you how. Okay, the second and third way is by CLI and SDK. Okay, so CLI is your command level interface by which you can access AWS resources, and this SDK is your software development toolkit by which your programs, the applications which are using on AWS resources can access those. Okay, and both of these are basically protected by access keys. Okay, so what are access keys? So access keys are generated by AWS root user, or IAM user can also generate that through management console. Okay, so you can take this in this manner, like your access key ID is just like your user ID, and your secret access key is just like your password. Okay, so these command line interface and SDK are basically protected by access keys. So access keys are just like a password for them. Okay, and same like your password, you should not share your access keys which from anyone with anyone. Okay, now let's see what is a command line interface. So command line interface is like an alternative to AWS management console. Okay, AWS command line tool is a tool that basically enables you to interact with AWS services from command line. So up until now, what we were doing, we were using AWS management console, and through management console, I was using that IAM service and all. But also from command line interface level, you can also access all the services which you want. Okay. CLI access AWS sources and services by authenticate itself with the help of access key. Okay. If you see in this diagram, like an IAM user is producing having this access key and access key ID and secret key. And after that, it will use those keys to basically authenticate itself. And after that, it can access the AWS resources. Okay. Similarly, software development kit enables us to access and manage AWS service programmatically. Okay. AWS SDK is already embedded into our application, and it supports wide variety of programming languages like Java, Python, and you can code in any language. Also, it supports your mobile development on the base. You can do Android development, you can do iOS development also. Also, you can do a development of your IoT devices. So SDKs for that is also available, like your embedded C, your Arduino, etc. So these are the different SDKs which are present. But to access your AWS resources, they will be requiring the access keys. Okay, so let's see how we can basically use this CLI access CLI. Okay, first of all, what I'll do, I'll go to this management console. Now let's again first of all create a access key for this Donna user. So I'm clicking on this Donna. Here, come to the security credentials, and under this access key you can basically create your access key here. Okay, AWS providing you a warning that never post your secret access key on public platforms such as GitHub. Okay, because this can compromise your account security. Okay, and this is only a one time where when you are seeing your access key details. Okay, and you can basically download it into a CSV file format, but in the management console you will not be able to see this detail after that. Okay, so I have generated this access key ID and this secret access key. Now what we will need a CLI to use this particular thing. Okay, so first of all we will have to install CLI onto our terminal. Okay, so you can install CLI in two manners. Either you can follow this official documentation which is being provided by AWS. So I'll provide you the link of this in the description below. You can go through this and install it on your machine. So whatever machine you are having. So first of all, you can check the prerequisites of that. Then you can install it and try to install it the latest version. Okay. So if you are using Linux machine, then you can install it for the Linux. Also, if you are using Mac or if you are using Windows. So accordingly, whatever device you are using, then you can install the AWS CLI on your machine. Also, there is a GitHub page where the installation steps are mentioned. There you can follow this installation methodology also if you are using a Linux based machine. Okay, so I'll also provided a link of this particular GitHub in the description below. Okay, since I have already installed the this CLI, so I will not going to install it again. Okay, so let's go to this again. Now what I will do, we will configure our CLI. Okay, so just go to terminal. Here, first of all, I can see whatever version we are having. So that is a current CLI version which I am having. Okay, so now let's configure this particular user. So what I will do, I will click on AWS configure. It will ask for my access key ID. I can copy paste this. Then it needs the secret access key. Then it is asking for default region name. I can leave it as blank for now. Then it is asking for default output format. I can leave it as blank for now. And yeah, it is done. Okay, so let's run a command to check whether a connection is established or not. So I'll run this command AWS IAM list user. Okay, so what it will do, it will list the users which are from basically for all the users which are present. Okay, so here you can see since we are having only one user, that is Donna, so it returned the detail of that particular user. Okay, now what I'll do next, I'll remove the permission of this Donna user and then I'll again run this command. Okay, so now I'm going back again to management console, go into this users, Donna permissions. I'm removing this permission. Okay, now I have removed all the permissions of this. Let's just refresh it to make it double sure. Okay, no permission is present on this user for now. Okay, now again I'll run this command. And here you can see that error occurred, access denies, because this particular user is not having any permission to run this particular CLI command. Okay, so in this manner, whatever permission you are doing, assigning it from management console, the same way it will reflect into the CLI also. Okay, so because you are using the same AWS resources either through management console or through CLI. Okay, so yeah, that is all in today's video. In the next video, I'll talk about the remaining part of this AWS IAM module. Okay, so there are some more things which is remaining, which I'll cover in the next video. Okay, so please do like the video, share this video with your friends and colleagues, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel, The Ethical Cruise. Also, you can visit my blogging website, ethicalcruise.com, where you can read about the security basics, footprinting and reconnaissance, and also about the cloud computing and AWS thing, which I'm just teaching you now. Okay. So I will see you all in the next video to continue with this cloud computing series. Okay, till then, thank you. Bye bye.